I'll be serving as a chairperson for UNHRC, and we have Lakshay here who's serving as the vice chairperson. The rapporteur could not be here for certain reasons, but you will see him during the conference. So coming straight to my expectations from the committee, I really do believe like foreign policy is a very important aspect of the conference. So I really expect you guys to be well researched with the foreign policy and strictly adhere to it during the conference. Besides that, in terms of the agenda, I'm pretty sure you guys are doing your research. I really suggest reading the background guide. It'll just give you a basic, outline of how to go about the conference and what to research about. So it'll give you a direction. And secondly, since it's UNHRC, I also expect you guys to come up with creative solutions because UNHRC leaves a larger space for originality, which a lot of other committees do not. So that being a plus point, Lakshay, would you like to introduce yourself and then we can move on to the training?
Good afternoon, delegates. I'm Sharma. I'll be serving as the vice chairperson of the committee. As ma'am said, UNHRC has a big space, and as you'll be fighting, as you'll be deliberating for the rights of people, and truly, if you connect it to your own emotions, to your own sentiments, you get that there are people out there who need support, who need your voice. So that's what we expect from you at the committee, that whatever you do, whatever solutions you give should be idealistic and should be acceptable in the real world. That's all I would like to say.
Yeah, so I would like to know how many timers are here in terms of the conference. Aditya, are you going to help me with that?
Yeah, delegates, you must be seeing a raise hand option. Please go and raise your hands. Click on the participants tab, and then you may see a raise hand option. Like those of you who are first timers, please raise your hand. Yes, ma'am. So, ma'am, please
Yeah,
click on
I'm
the
seeing the.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Great. So we have about 8 to 10 first timers, which is perfectly fine. So for the benefit of the committee, I would just start with basics. If there are any questions, delegates, you may raise your hand. Aditya, just help me out that once they raise their hand, how do I recognize for them to speak?
Yeah.
So like, what do I do after they raise their hand? For
They raise
example, if
their
they have a
hands. Like
question.
you can call out their names. Like Philippines has
Okay,
raised the
great,
hand,
great.
so you can say Philippines. You may unmute yourself, and then I'll lower the hand of Philippines from my side.
Okay, great, great, got it. So delegates, if you have any question at any point during this entire session, you may raise your hand at any given point. Please do not hesitate. So I think it is like basically I am expecting all of you to know what the United Nations is, how it functions, what the UNHRC is about. Are there any questions regarding those basics in terms of what the United Nations does, or in terms of how the United Nations functions, and what the role of the UNHRC is? Are there any questions regarding that? If not, we'll proceed to the how the committee is going to function. Otherwise, I'll just address those questions first. Are there any delegates? You may raise your hands if there are any questions.
Delegates, it's a request. Like get all your doubts cleared today itself, because I don't think we'll be having another session with ma'am chairperson again. So like get it cleared right now so that you don't face any problem in the committee.
Are there any questions relevant in terms of what the UN does, how the UNHRC functions? If not, we'll proceed to the rest of the training.
Diksha ma'am,
Yeah. Yes, Aditya was saying something.
ma'am, please check the chat option also.
Where is? Oh yeah, I got it. Is it still there? Hello.
Yes ma'am, I'm there.
Okay, great. So I'll have the participant window open. If there are any questions, delegates, I expect you to speak it out rather than type it to me. Just raise your hand if there are any questions at any point of time. Now, seeing no questions, let's just straight up move with how this conference works. So, delegates, you must have done conferences before, or seen conferences before. So, in terms of how it works, I'll just straight up start with the beginning, right? So, in say an offline conference, you first reach the venue And then after the conference is set in the motion and the executive board sort of comes, after that, the first thing that's done is the attendance, the roll call, right? So now how the roll call works is the chairperson or any one of the executive board members will call out your country names, and then you have to respond. Your response can be of two categories. It can be either present or it can be present and voting. Now, say for example, if I'm the delegate of say India.
Ma'am, so sorry. I'd like to mention delegates. You may switch on your videos so that it is a interactive session and makes it interesting for each of us.
Yeah, I think that would add to the interaction part. I would request delegates to switch on the video if that's not a problem.
Delegates, please switch on your videos, all of you. Yes, delegates, you may do it yourselves. Okay, ma'am, you may continue.
Can everyone hear me?
Yes, sure. What is it?
Nothing. I was checking the mic.
Okay, great.
My phone is going through some technical issues. That's why.
That's fine. Delegates, if you have any question at any point of time, you can raise your hand. You will be recognized. Okay, so now moving ahead with how the attendance and how the roll call works. So for example, if I'm the delegate of say India, so the executive board will call out India, and I have two options, either to respond with present or to respond with present and voting. Now this voting part which is being talked about during the roll call refers to the substantive voting, right? So whenever there's a substantive voting in the conference, if you respond with the present and voting, you cannot abstain later when there's a substantive motion. When there's a procedural motion, everyone has to vote. Now coming to what substantive and procedural motions are, delegates, if you want me to go slow, fast, repeat something, just raise your hand. Anything, just raise your hand. Yeah. So what procedural motions are? Procedural motions are regarding the procedure of the committee and the ongoing sessions and how it takes place, and how what motion is to be raised. All that happens with regard to the procedure of the conference are procedural motions, right? Now during procedural motions, no delegate can choose to abstain. You will have to vote. It's either a yes or a no, but you'll have to vote. Coming to substantive voting is in terms of substance which is added to the committee with regards to say a draft resolution or an amendment, or passing a draft, or like a press release, whatever the committee in the end decides to come up with. So is the difference between what is a procedural vote and what is a substantive vote clear to the delegates? If there are any questions, you may raise your hands. Delegates, seeing none, let's just move ahead with the next part, which is, did someone raise their hand? Okay, great. Seeing no questions, let's move on to how points are considered in the conference. I'm pretty sure voting is clear to you all, right? Great. So coming to points now, as a delegate, whenever you want to speak in a conference, there's a certain decorum which has to be maintained. You can't just stand up and speak whenever you would like to. So for you, you'll have to be recognized before you want to speak. Right now, how that recognition works is through points, right? So wherever the chair asks if there are points on the floor, you can raise points, and even if there's something you want to, there's a discomfort of sorts or something needs to be said, so you can raise your points voluntarily. In an offline conference, how you raise your points is by raising your placard, right? I just tell you, basically in an offline conference, just raise your placard like this, and that's it. And then you wait for the executive board to recognize you. So how points function is, if you guys are taking notes, I can go slower. So there are 4 kinds of points in place, right? Which are point of privilege, point of parliamentary inquiry, point of order, and point of information. Now, how we take up these points one by one. So, first of all, coming to points of personal privilege. Now, how that works is, say, for example, during the committee or during the session, if there is any discomfort of sorts, or the delegate is facing an issue in terms of their personal capacity, like someone is not audible, there's an audio issue, there's a video issue in terms of an EMUN, or say in a real conflict, like the delegate is not comfortable in any way, they can raise a point of personal privilege. And a point of personal privilege is usually not the one to be ignored. It can be raised at any point during the conference, in the middle of someone's speech, at any point, although it is preferred that the point of personal privilege is not raised in the middle of someone speaking, but if the emergency demands so, it can be. It's not against the rules of procedure in any way. So I will just give you a basic example. If a delegate wants to raise a point of personal privilege, they'll raise their placard like that. On being recognized, it just basically tells the delegate is facing certain issues with the audio, or somebody is not audible, or some point needs to be repeated, or anything of that sort, which regards to personal discomfort of the delegate. Is this clear? Like, do you guys understand what a point of personal privilege is? If there are any questions regarding this point, you may raise your hands now. Great. Seeing no questions, let's move on to the next point, which is the point of parliamentary inquiry. Now, a point of parliamentary inquiry basically deals with the proceedings of the conference, right? So, say if a procedure is not clear at any point of time, or say how voting is going to happen, or how any proceeding of the conference is supposed to work, any problem with the ROP's rule of procedure, or any problem in terms of the procedure or the running of the committee. If the delegate has a confusion, they may raise a point of parliamentary inquiry. Again, they'll raise their placards, and on raising their placards, then they recognize, they can basically ask their question. It is basically a question regarding the procedure, regarding the proceedings of the committee and how all of that works. Is this clear?
Delegates, again, get it cleared right now, because seeing that half of the committees are first timers, so I personally say that I got cleared with the ROPs in my third MUN. So like, get it cleared right now so that you don't face any problems in the committee and committee move smoothly.
Delegates, it's the best to have any doubts addressed, because honestly, in the next conferences you go to, it gets.
Is asking a question from you. It's in the chat box. How do we proceed in the procedure, and what is a moderated caucus?
I'll just see the chat box. How do I open the chat box? Chat में तो कुछ नहीं दिखा रहा, like
Ma'am, like, move ahead with it. Move ahead with it. Like, it would be covered, delegates. Nora, ma'am has said that she'll recognize speakers by the raise hand features. So
yeah, I want to address all questions by the raise hand feature, not in the chat.
Bahamas is raising hand.
So I was
Yeah.
telling you.
Yeah, great, Bahamas. Yes, tell me you're recognized. Also, delegates, one more thing, whoever is recognized, I would want their video to be on while they're talking. It would make the conference more interactive. Yes, Bahamas, you may address your doubt.
Maybe it was by mistake, ma'am. You can continue.
Great. Okay, so there is no doubt. Yeah. So now, considering that the points of personal privilege and point of parliamentary inquiry are clear, we'll move to the next point, which is the point of order. Now, this is where a lot of chairpersons and a lot of conferences go about differently. Like, a lot of conferences might tell you that point of order is actually that a factual inaccuracy, or to point out an incorrect fact made by another delegate, but that's not the case. The actual way how points of orders are dealt with is to the executive board. A point of order is never made to another delegate. A point of order is made to the executive board when the delegates feel that either the executive board is legislating over their power, or there's something incorrect in terms of a procedure which the executive board was supposed to follow and they did not. So basically, it is a fallacy on part of the executive board and not the delegate. I'll give you a very basic example. Say, a basic example, like if in the speakers list, say Brazil was recognized after Austria, and the executive board missed out the name of Brazil. So Brazil can basically raise a point of order and point out the fallacy that Brazil was recognized and the executive board ignored that recognition. So that being the point of order. So basically, a point of order is a fallacy on part of the executive board, or an inaccuracy on part of the executive board, and not to other delegates. A point of order will always be addressed to the EB and not to other delegates. Is this clear, delegates? Great. Seeing no questions, the next point we move to is point of information. Now, point of information is the most interesting one and also the most interactive one in the conference. So say, for example, one delegate is done speaking and they have, say, 30 seconds left and they want to take in points of information. The points of information are basically questions, right? So these are basically questions you ask to another delegate after their speech is done. The executive, like the moment the executive board asks you if there are any points on the floor in terms of points of information, then you raise your placard. Once you recognize, you can go ahead with asking the question to the particular delegate it was meant for, right? So basically, a point of information is the most interactive one. Now, I'll just do a quick recap of the points. Like, we did a point of personal privilege can be raised at any point of time because it's regarding personal discomfort of the delegate. Secondly, a point of order is only and only addressed to the executive board and not to another delegate in the conference. It is meant to point out an inaccuracy on part of the executive board. Uh, Next, being the point of parliamentary inquiry, again, it can be raised. It is raised to the executive board because you want to ask a question to the executive board. That being a point of parliamentary inquiry in terms of the proceedings or of the conference, right? And the last one being the point of information, which is basically the most interactive one, where you get to ask a question to another delegate, or you get to, interact or actively engage in a debate during the conference. Is all of this clear? If there are any questions, delegates, you may raise your hand now.
Ma'am, kindly like brief again, like our international delegate Isaac Hughes has joined us right now. He hails from UK, so like he's a first timer. He gave me a text like just brief it again,
Okay,
like in a
hi
very
Isaac.
layman language.
Hi Isaac. So we just basically did a very simple understanding of how votings work and how like the sort of votings that are there, substantive and procedural. I think for the benefit of the committee, I'll just repeat everything once again, not that we are short of time anyway. So Isaac, is this your first MUN?
Yes.
Great. So I'm glad you chose Manhattan MUN and the UNHRC to be your first one. So in terms of, so I'll just start with in terms of how a conference works right from the beginning, when you reach the conference venue and once the executive board and the delegates are in place, how a conference works is the first thing that is done after introductions are over is voting, right? Not voting, is a roll call in which you have to answer with either present or present and voting. Now, how the roll call works is it's just like it happens in school. The executive board will call out the names of the delegate country of the delegates or the countries. So you can either respond by present or you can respond by present in voting. So say for example, if I'm the delegate of say India and I want and when India is called out, I can respond with either present or I can respond with present in voting. Now this present and voting which is being talked about is voting for substantial matters and not procedural matters. I'll also tell you how substantial and procedural matters are different. Procedural matters are basically matters uh, regarding the occurring of the conference, right? See how the procedure works or what motions are to be raised, not raised, passed, if there's a moderated caucus or an unmoderated caucus, how all of the procedure works in the conference. Those are all procedural motions. Substantive motions, however, are the ones which actually might make a difference in terms of, say, passing an amendment or, a draft resolution or, basically substantial matter in the committee. Is that clear?
Yeah.
So when it comes to responding to the roll call, the voting that is being talked about is only substantive and not procedural. Procedural voting, when it comes to that, you cannot abstain. Every delegate present has to vote for procedural voting. No abstention is possible. Now, after this, we did a bit
I'm
of
just a doubt which I received in chat. Ma'am,
yeah.
how would the delegates be recognized, like clarified right now, like to speak?
Oh, they just raise their hand right now if they want to. Is that clear?
Does Netherlands, you want to ask something?
I don't see a
Yeah,
raise.
I had to, but I did ask it to Aditya, so he cleared it out. Thank you, Aditya for that.
Okay, great. So now moving ahead with the points. So basically, there are four types of points that can be raised during a conference. The first point being a point of personal privilege. Now, whenever a delegate wishes to speak in the middle of a conference, that can be done either when the executive board recognizes them or when they raise a point, right? So now the first point we'll talk about is point of personal privilege. So a point of personal privilege, just like the name suggests, is basically meant for a personal discomfort of sorts, or when the delegate has a personal issue. Let's say there's an audio issue, a video issue, and in an e-conference or an offline conference. If say like someone is not audible enough, some point needs to be repeated, or any sort of a discomfort if the delegate is facing, they raise a point of personal privilege. Now, the beauty about point of personal privilege is that it can be raised at any given point in the conference. There is no limit in terms of it can only be raised when no one's talking, or a point of personal privilege can be raised at any point, even in the middle of someone's speech, because it is given prime importance. So that being done, we come to points of parliamentary inquiry. Now, if any delegate at any given point of time is not clear about the procedure of how the committee is functioning, or a certain sort of the way in which a committee functions, or a parliamentary inquiry of sorts, like they are unaware about something, or they want clarification from the executive board, so at that point they can raise a point of parliamentary inquiry. Again, how it's done is, you are given a placard in an offline conference, you raise your placard like that, and that's how you recognize. In an online conference, however, if you want to be recognized, there'll be a feature of raise hand on your chat box. You just touch that, like you click on that, and I'll recognize you. So now moving ahead with the next point. The next point is point of order. Now this is where a lot of times there are confusions which happen, because in a lot of chairpersons, they might take this in terms of raising a factual inaccuracy on part of another delegate. However, that's not how the point of order works. A point of order is basically a point raised to point out an inaccuracy on part of the executive board. Like, say for example, if the chairperson or if the executive board was supposed to recognize Egypt after India, and by mistake Egypt was missed out, so they can raise a point of order where they say that the delegate of Egypt was missed, however they were recognized. So that being factual, or an inaccuracy on part of the executive board. So to address inaccuracies or incorrectness on part of the executive board, a point of order is raised. So now, understand, delegates, that a point of personal privilege is raised for your own discomfort. A point of parliamentary inquiry is raised for the confusion that you have. A point of order is always raised to the executive board, never to another delegate, to point out an inaccuracy. And now the last point being the point of information. A point of information is the most interactive one. A point of information is basically a question, right? When after a speech, a delegate has time left and they want to entertain questions. A point of information is how you raise your questions to the delegates. You raise your placard, the EB recognizes, and then you can proceed with the point. Is everything so far clear, delegates? If there are any sort of doubts, you may ask now. United Kingdom has asked if there are marks for chits and how will we gain here. We'll talk about the chits towards the end. Delegates, if there are any other doubts, you may raise your hands. Now, seeing none, I would give it over to Lakshay, the vice chairperson, for a bit. He'll also address a few points he needs to make, and then we'll proceed with motions in the conference. Lakshay, are you there?
Ma'am, may I continue with motions?
Yeah, great. You can continue. Do you have anything to say about voting, procedural, substantive voting?
Ma'am, you made it very
points?
clear. You made it very clear.
Great. So you can go ahead with what you have to say.
Okay, so delegates, coming to motions. Basically, motion, when you hear the word motion, the thing that comes to your mind is sort of a movement. So that is what motion does. It gives a particular direction. It gives a particular movement to the committee. It has a much larger concept when you compare it to a point. If a point does not have an impact on the overall committee, a motion does. It is an instrument which could be used by all of you to suspend a formal debate. The formal debate is our general speakers list or the GFL. So a motion is an instrument which could use to suspend it and move into other forms of debates, which are general motions which are raised in a committee are regarding to your caucuses, so your moderated caucus and unmoderated caucus. Clear till here? Okay. So when we come to moderated and unmoderated caucuses, so before that, I'm going to give you all the first timers a statement which could be used to raise a motion. If you want, you can note it down. And if you don't want, you can just hear it. So it's just like the delegate of XYZ would like to suspend the formal debate and move into a dash dash dash. Now there dash 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 depends upon which type of motion you are raising. So when we discuss each and every motion in detail, then we'll give alter the main statement according to different types of motions. For delegate, the first motion which I'm going to discuss with you is a moderated caucus. A moderated caucus and unmoderated caucus together are called the informal debate of the committee. The moderated caucus is used to discuss subtopics of the main agenda. The agenda has a very broad range, has a very big picture, and if you speak your GSL regarding to the agenda, you can't cover each and every point, or you can't cover a specific point in detail. So there are always on the agenda, there are points which need to be addressed, which need to be discussed with great emphasis. And on such small topics out of the main agenda, we have moderated caucuses, which are nothing like but your GFL itself, but it is done on a subtopic, and it has a total time. Like your GFL is for the whole 2 days. It is a not exhausting item of the conference, whereas your moderated caucus is for a specific period of time in which each delegate is given a specific time to speak upon. Is that clear till here? Do you have any questions? Seeing none, we proceed. So in the moderated caucus, like we have the big agenda, changing dynamics of human rights in a post-pandemic world and the protection. So a subtopic to that could be a new normal, which is also discussed in your background guide. So such are the small topics which are available in the agenda, which you need to filter out, and then you need to debate upon. So now we have something called an unmoderated caucus. An unmoderated caucus is an open discussion where each and every delegate can speak without the interference of the executive board. So what basically happens is the executive board sort of leaves the committee in a real conference, but as we are in an online conference, the executive board will mute themselves and all the delegates would be open to discuss, lobby, or discuss for topics for the further moderated caucus. So it's an open discussion between the topic or between the delegates, and you all can discuss upon whatever you feel right for the committee. Am I clear till here with the unmoderated caucus? Seeing no hands, we proceed. So in an unmoderated caucus, I told you it's an open discussion. It again has a time limit, which could range anywhere from 5 minutes to 20 minutes, or whatever time the delegate who raises the motion sets the total time to. Okay, delegates. Now I'll tell you something called order of disruption, and then I'll give you the statement for the moderated and the unmoderated caucuses. So delegates, whenever motions are raised, it's always 2-3 motions are raised together by different delegates. So it is voted upon something called order of disruption. So an order of disruption is basically which motion allows most of the maximum number of people to speak. Like an unmoderated caucus for 1 minute allows the complete committee to speak. Whereas a moderated caucus for 10 minutes with individual speakers standing 60 seconds allow 10 people to speak. So obviously the unmoderated caucus for 1 minute stands above in the order of disruption in comparison to the moderated caucus. So usually the executive board put the motion for voting in the order of disruption, but it depends upon the executive board. They can either choose between order of disruption or order of recognition. Now, delegates, if you want, I can give you the statements for the moderated and unmoderated caucuses. If you want, first timers, would you please raise your hands? Okay, so we have people needing it. So the statement for a moderated caucus goes as, delegate of XYZ would like to suspend the formal debate and move into a moderated caucus for total time dash minutes, individual speakers time dash minutes on the topic dash. So these 3 dashes are filled according to the delegate's own whatever the time the delegate want to set and whatever the subtopic the delegate wants to use. And the statement for the unmoderated caucus is the delegate of XYZ would like to suspend the formal debate, like to move into an unmoderated caucus for the total time dash. An unmoderated caucus doesn't have an individual speaker's time or a subtopic. As I earlier stated, it's an open discussion. Any doubts? Do you want to repeat me any statement or any other thing?
Lakshya, I'll interrupt you for a bit.
Yes,
Am I
ma'am.
clear, Professor?
Ma'am, could be a bit louder, like earlier you were louder.
Can you guys hear me now? Is it clear?
Yeah, ma'am.
Great. So I think because like the motions are a bit hurried, but you should just repeat it once again. Right?
Ma'am, you weren't audible.
Oh God, I think am I audible now?
Yes, ma'am, you are.
Yeah, I think for the benefit of the committee, let's just repeat the motions part once again because like this is where a lot of people might commit mistake, right? So
Okay, ma'am.
I'll just ask the delegates. Delegates, do you guys want the motions part to be repeated from the very beginning in terms of what a GSL, PSL, moderated caucus, and unmoderated caucus is? The delegates, if you want repetition of that part, you may raise your hands right now. Isaac, a raising your hand feature is right there on your chat box. If you see, there's a raise hand feature on the bottom right when you open the participant box. So on the bottom, you see a participant box.
Yeah.
Yeah, so click that, and there's a
It's in
raise hand feature.
reactions. This, right?
No, not this. Just a second.
I'll let you know.
Okay, so you
Isaac, go to the participants tab.
Okay.
Yeah, and then there must be an option visible known as the raise hand feature. Raise hand option must be visible. Yeah,
There.
we can see your hand. And then when
so
you click
that's how
on
you
it
raise
again, your hand gets lowered. Okay? Yeah,
Okay.
So
you
all
lowered your
throughout the
hand.
conference, any recognition issues, if there are any questions or anything of that sort, this is how you'll be recognized. You just have to raise your hand for any sort of issues. Is everything clear?
Yeah.
Great. Delegates, would you like a repetition on motions in terms of what a GSL, PSL, moderated caucus, and unmoderated caucus is? If so, please raise your hands now. Great. I see a few of you wanting it. So great. I'll just repeat everything which Lakshay has mentioned. And again, in terms of what GSL is, moderated caucus and unmoderated caucus is. Now, delegates, when a committee opens, you just can't straight up start discussing a motion, or you just can't straight up start the conference in terms of how you want it to go about. So to tackle that issue, we take the conference with agendas and subtopics. Right now, one agenda which has been given, which you have right now, is sort of an umbrella agenda. Now, under that agenda, there might be quite a few more topics which you want to discuss. Say, take a very basic example. I'm not taking the example of our current agenda because obvious reasons. So let's take an example of, solving the problem in the Middle East, right? Now, see, when that is the agenda, this is a huge one, right? So when you talk about solving issues in terms of everything that's going on in the Middle East, there might be a lot of implications. Agenda is solving issue in the Middle East, or solving the crisis in the Middle East, but under that there could be subheadings in terms of solving the refugee crisis, solving the trade relations, dealing with border disputes. Like, these are subtopics under that very umbrella heading. Now, when that happens, you have to address all the subtopics in the conference, right? And to make that easier, we have moderated caucuses, unmoderated caucuses, the GSL, which is the general speakers list, and the PSL, which is the provisional speakers list. Now, this is how the committee and the debate structure works. So when after the roll call is done, when the committee opens, mostly the chairperson or the executive board will mostly ask if you guys want to by default move into a GSL, which is the general speakers list, or if you guys want opening statements of sorts. Now, opening statements are not so popular, although some committees do that, but the most popular trend is the GSL, which is the general speakers list. When a conference opens, the executive board asks if the delegates have any points or any motions on the floor. So either we get into a GSL by default by the discretion of the executive board, or the delegates have an option to raise a motion for that. Now, how if the executive board by default does not get into a general speakers list, the delegates can raise a motion. Now, how you raise a motion to get into a general speakers list is as follows. If you guys want, you can write it down. So the delegate of XYZ would like to, I was writing it down by any chance?
Yeah.
Great. So the delegate of XYZ would like to open the floor for the general speakers list, and the time need not be mentioned because the by default time in general speakers list is 60 seconds. However, if delegates wanted to be raised or reduced, so you can add that in your motion. For example, if the delegate wants the general speaker list timing to be raised to say 90 seconds, so then they can raise a motion and claim that the delegate of XYZ country would like to open the floor for the general speakers list, each speaker's time being 90 seconds. Otherwise, if the time is not mentioned, a general speakers list by default is 60 seconds. Any questions, delegates? If there are any questions, you may raise your hands now. Okay, seeing none. Now I hope the general speakers list is clear. So now the general speakers list is not exhaustive in nature. So say for example, once the speakers list is open, and once the floor is open for speakers' names to be added, the executive board will ask the delegates who all want their names to be added in the general speakers list, upon which delegates might raise their hand in case of a virtual conference, or might raise their placard in case of an offline conference. Now, once say 10 delegates have been recognized, so we'll move ahead with the general speakers list. However, the nature of the general speakers list is that it is not exhaustive. If the conference lasts for 2 days, the general speakers list goes on for 2 days, right? And how we go about it is that we have moderated caucuses or unmoderated caucuses in the middle of the general speakers list. And when we exhaust a moderated caucus or a discussion on any one of the subtopics, we by default revert to the GSL. So therefore, if there are like 10 names in the GSL, and when your chance is there, when a particular delegate chance is there, and that has been interrupted by say a moderated caucus of sorts, so consider that once that moderated caucus is over, you revert to the GSL by default. Is this part clear to everyone? Netherlands, you have a question. Yes, go ahead.
Yeah. Ma'am, actually, in the previous MUNs that I have attended, the default time for the GSL was 90 seconds, and we had an option to move it to either 120 or 60 seconds. So I had a confusion for this.
Again, so depends on which format were you guys following the UNC USA format?
Okay.
If that's the case, in terms of what format you guys are following could be different, but mostly GSL is 60 seconds. You can raise it to 90 in a lot of conferences. People do raise it to 90, or you can reduce it to even 45 seconds. Is that all?
Yeah, that's it.
Okay, great. Considering the GSL part is clear to everyone, coming to the moderated caucuses. Now, understand, delegate, a moderated caucus and unmoderated caucus, as fancy as it sounds, it is not so fancy, so you don't need to get confused. A moderated caucus is basically a discussion on one of the subtopics of the agenda, just like Lakshya also discussed with you. A moderated caucus is basically when an umbrella agenda is given and you want a particular issue to be discussed. Take, for example, the COVID pandemic, right? Now, under the pandemic situation, if you want to say address, say you want to address the condition of, say, healthcare workers, right? You know how the healthcare workers are affected by this entire situation, and you need a discussion of, say, 20 minutes on that particular subtopic. So for that, you raise a moderated caucus. Now, just like Lakshay told, he has told you how to raise it. I'll repeat that once again. Now, how you raise a moderated caucus is you say the delegate of XYZ would like to suspend formal debate. Are you guys writing it down? If you are, I'll speak slower. The delegate of XYZ would like to suspend formal debate and move into a moderated caucus. on the topic, and then you mention the topic, whichever you want it to be, XYZ. For the total time you can choose. It can be 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes. And each speaker's time, again, you have the discretion of choosing it to be 45, 60, 90, or 120. So the entire motion would go like the delegate of XYZ would like to suspend formal debate and move into a moderated caucus on the topic XYZ. Total time being 10 minutes, with the speaker's time being, say, 60 seconds. Is this clear? Does anyone want a repetition of how to raise a moderated caucus? If so, please raise your hand. Yes, Itisha Goyal. Is there a doubt of sorts, or do you just want a repetition of the statement?
Ma'am, can you please repeat that?
Yeah, great. So how you raise a moderated caucus? I'm repeating the statement. The delegate of XYZ would like to suspend formal debate and move into a moderated caucus. You can also say raise a moderated caucus, that's up to you. On the topic, then you mention the topic XYZ. Total time, with the total time, again, mention the time, whatever you want it to be, 10, 15, 20 minutes. The peak time being, again, whatever you want it to be, 45, 60, 90, or 120 seconds. Is this clear? Great. If there are any more doubts, you may raise your hands. Now, just for a better understanding, I'll just enact how to raise a motion, how to raise a moderated caucus on the topic, say, condition of, say, migrants in migrants in countries afflicted by war. Now, how I would do that is that, say, if I'm the delegate of India, so the delegate of India would like to suspend formal debate and raise a moderated caucus on the topic, the condition of migrant workers in war afflicted regions, for a total time of 20 minutes, each speaker's time being 120 seconds. So that's how you raise a motion for a moderated caucus. Now, once a motion has been raised, there is a voting which takes place. Now, this voting, considering it is in terms of the procedure of the ongoing of the committee, this will be a procedural voting, right? So now how procedural voting works is nobody can abstain. No delegate can abstain from procedural voting. So when a motion is put to vote, you have to make up your mind if you want that motion to be discussed or not to be discussed. So once a delegate has proposed a motion, the executive board will ask if there are any seconds to the motion. So if you want it to be discussed, you raise your placard at that point. If there are no seconds to the motion automatically fails. Now, what that means is basically seconding a motion means that you as well want it to be discussed, right? Now, that is what it means by seconding a motion. So if there are no seconds to a motion, it fails. Now, moving ahead with the opposition. Now, after the executive board has asked for seconds to the motion, the executive board also asks if there are oppositions to the motion. Again, if there are oppositions, you raise your placard, and then it goes into voting, which is either a yes or a no. So those in favor and those in against. So if there is a simple majority, which is 50% plus 1. So if there is a simple majority, the motion passes. If there is not, it fails. Is this clear to everyone? Delegates, is there any questions? You may raise your hands now. Great. So seeing none, so that's how you raise a motion. That's how it passes. If the motion passes, then you start the discussion for the given time period. If not, there's another motion which is raised. So great. The next being the unmoderated caucus. Now, delegates, an unmoderated caucus is an informal setting. A moderated caucus, just how it was a very formal setting, it was being marked upon. An unmoderated caucus is an informal setting. Informal setting in terms of, say, for example, if during the conference the delegates, want to discuss something in terms of proceeding, how they want to go about the conference, or if there's anything they sort of want to discuss in the conference, then they may raise an unmoderated caucus where the executive board is not present, because an unmoderated caucus is informal. The executive board is not present while they're having an unmoderated caucus. Now, how you raise a motion for an unmoderated caucus is this: the delegate of XYZ country would like to suspend formal debate and move into an unmoderated caucus for the total time being dash whatever 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes. There is no individual speaker time being, because considering an unmoderated caucus does not involve individual speakers. It is basically suspension of formal debate, and then after suspension, just the delegates discussing whatever they want to discuss in an informal way. However, I suggest the delegates do not shout, scream, or basically behave in a bad manner during the unmoderated caucus. An unmoderated caucus purpose is mostly to have to give direction. Like, say for example, if a lot of motions are being raised, every motion fails after one after the other, and there is no consent in terms of what the delegates want to discuss, that is a point where the delegates might want to take an unmoderated caucus and sort of amongst themselves try to figure out what they actually want to discuss in the committee, or where they want the conference to go. That is mostly the reason where an unmoderated caucus takes place. Also, sometimes delegates might want an unmoderated caucus to discuss documentation or papers, or stuff like that, which is up to the delegates. In those terms, once the delegate raises a motion for an unmoderated caucus or a moderated caucus, after it is put to vote, if the committee passes, it goes ahead. If it doesn't pass, it fails. The executive board does not get to decide on which motion to get passed, right? I hope that is clear. Now, the order of disruption, I'm pretty sure Lakshay has made it very clear. An order of disruption is basically, how in how much involvement of the committee it requires. Like, say for example, unmoderated caucus is what requires the maximum involvement, because there's no one particular person who speaks. So the order of disruption would go like the unmoderated caucus at the top, then moderated caucus, right? So now, if you have to discuss the order of disruption of say 4, 5 motions, the unmoderated caucus with the maximum time goes first, then unmoderated caucus with lesser time, then moderated caucus, both. Again, the with higher time, the one with higher time goes ahead, right? That being the order of disruption. Lakshay, is there anything else you want them to know? I would give it over to
No, ma'am, you can continue.
you. Okay, great. GSL is done, moderated caucus is done, unmoderated caucus is done. Coming to PSL. Now, PSLs are basically provisional speakers list. Again, they're not very popular, but they might come in handy to know. So, PSL is basically a temporary sort of a provisional speakers list which is established. Now, I'll give you an example. Say, for example, if there's a crisis in the committee, a crisis which has been introduced, right? And now speakers want to speak on the crisis. So at that point of time, the GSL will not stand valid. Right now, when the GSL does not stand valid and delegates still want to speak, so you might open the floor for a provisional speakers list. Right? When names are added, it's basically a temporary GSL of sorts. A temporary sort of speakers list where delegates get their names added and they might speak. This can happen in terms of a crisis situation, or when there's an unforeseen situation in the committee. Is that clear? Yes, Netherlands, you have a doubt. Netherlands, you've raised your hand. Do you have a doubt? Netherlands, you've raised your hand. Do you have a doubt? Netherlands, do you have a doubt? You've raised your hand. Great, I think he doesn't have a doubt. Delegates, if there are any questions, you may ask at the given moment.
Yes, Ukraine.
Earlier, a order of recognition was mentioned as well. What is that, and how does it differ from the order of disruption?
Could you repeat yourself? I couldn't get your question.
Earlier, a order of recognition was mentioned. What is that, and how does it differ from the order of disruption?
An order of recognition. Lakshay, would you like to answer that?
Yeah, ma'am. For delegate of Ukraine, order of recognition is if the executive board recognizes three people, say A, B, C, and then put the motions to vote in the same order, that is A, B, C, and it is called the order of recognition. But when the executive board filters the agenda, filters the motions on the how much people the motion is gonna accommodate, then it is referred to as your order of disruption. Am I clear? Do you want me to go it even simpler language?
Yes, please.
Okay,
Okay, so
so
I'll just take it up. It's okay, I'll just take it up. So basically, if there are five people who've raised their, like, for example, if the house is open for a moderated caucus, and if there are five people who've raised their hand for raising motions, so okay, I'll give you an example. So there are, say, China, US, UK, France, and Russia. These five people have raised their placards for recognition. So I will probably pick up, say, I pick up US, France, Russia, China, and UK. So then the order of recognition will become US, France, Russia, China, UK in the order I call out the names, right? So that is the order of recognition, that US is recognized first, China is recognized second, France is recognized third, Russia recognized fourth, and UK recognized fifth. So this 1, 2, 3, 4 order is the order of recognition in terms of when the executive board calls them out for raising their motion. Is that clear?
Yes, thank
Yeah,
you.
so this is an order of recognition. However, an order of disruption is in terms of the motions they raised. Now, say for example, if US was recognized first, but the motion US raised is for a moderated caucus for, say, 10 minutes, right? So that in an order of disruption in terms of the involvement of the committee is at the bottom. And say UK, which was recognized the last, raises a motion for an unmoderated caucus for, say, 20 minutes. Disruption is the maximum there. So there the order of recognition and the order of disruption will be opposite. US was recognized first, but in terms of the disruption of the motion that they raised, they come last. However, UK was recognized at the last, but in terms of the disruption, they come first. Their motion will be put to vote first. Recognition is basically delegates calling out their motions, and disruption is basically their motions being put to vote. A motion with the maximum disruption is put to vote first. So basically, voting happens in a descending order from the maximum to the minimum order of disruption.
Okay.
Is that clear?
Yes, thank you.
Great. Lakshya, you may take ahead from this.
okay, delegates. So if you have
Ma'am,
any questions regarding,
UK has raised the hand. Yes, delegate of UK.
Yes, delegate of UK.
Ma'am, can you please specify the viable sources for research?
We'll come to that towards the end. If I forget, can you remind me again? Although I've noted down your question.
Sure. Thank you.
Great, Lakshya, you can take ahead.
okay, delegates. So did you have any questions on anything that was discussed from the first thing, that of your roll call, then points, motions, TFL, order of disruption, order of recognition? Any doubts? Seeing none, we'll move to the chits. So, okay, so I continue with the chits then. For delegates, chits are, okay, delegates, so chits are simply sort of like, first I'll explain you it in the context of an offline MUN, then we'll convert that thing into an EMUN. In an offline MUN, chits are basically a piece of paper on which you write something to communicate with either your fellow delegates or with the executive board. Okay, so it's sort of a paper messaging type of thing. That is that how chits work. It's a piece of paper where you write your message to either another delegate or to the executive board. Now, in an MUN, when these chits are transferred between the delegates, they're used for informal communication. And when it is transferred between the delegates and the executive board, it is used for a formal communication. In an informal communication, say delegate of X wants to ask a question to the delegate of Y, which is personal in nature, so you can directly ask it to the delegate of Y. So that would be a chit from X to Y, and whatever the question is. So am I clear on the informal communication note? Well, if I've seen a question, I think I'm clear. Now, when you move to formal communication, it's the communication that happens between the executive board and the delegates. For delegates, if you have any question that you want to ask to the executive board, or you have any research, any bit of information that you weren't able to speak in your GSL, that got skipped out or time was elapsed, so you weren't able to speak it, so you can give it to the executive board in writing, and that is called a substantive chit. A chit which is directed to the executive board from any delegate, which has points or facts regarding to the agenda, that is, you can say, a part of the speech which you weren't able to speak, is a substantive chit. So it is to EB, that is your to executive board from delegate. Just give me a second. Disturbance. For in a formal communication, we did substantive chits, that is a part of the speech or any fact that a delegate wants to share with the executive board and get marked upon. Now, delegates, there's a third kind of chit that involves all of us, that is the executive board and the delegates and another delegate. So that type of chits are basically most used in any conference. And in simple terms, it is from one delegate to the another delegate, but the delegate wants the executive board to take notice of such chits. Maybe it could be a question in the sense of point of information. Like delegate of X wants to ask a point of information, for short we'll call it POI, wants to ask a POI to the delegate of Y. It wasn't recognized when we were calling upon in the speech. So the delegate can give that question in writing. That would be from delegate of X to delegate of Y. Now, if the question goes from X to Y, the executive board won't know and it won't come to their notice, so you won't be marked upon it. So what generally do, we make that chit via EB. That is, it goes from the delegate of X to the delegate of Y via the executive board. That is, it forms a triangle. It will first come to the executive board. We'll mark upon it. We'll put a tick or something. Then we'll send it to the delegate whom the question is referred to. And if the answer comes, the answer would be marked. Otherwise, it won't be marked. So that is how chits work in an offline conference. Can like as ma'am said, we won't be having point of order in that context. Like it has ma'am explained, there are two kinds, two different perceptions by different executive boards. So there's nothing to discuss regarding point of order in chits. For delegates, are we clear in the chits in an offline conference? You want any repetition? If you have, please put it either in the chat box or raise your hand, and I'll wait for 5 seconds if anyone raises their hand or put a text. Seeing none, now we move toward the chits in an online MUN. So delegates, when we talk about an online conference or an e-conference, chits are again of importance because you can't speak everything in a committee. The time doesn't allow it. So obviously writing work is required. So here again the process is same. You send chits to EB, like we'll be having a word with the secretary and let you know there could be two methods for doing so. One is the chat box, which you have there in the Zoom itself, and you can just filter out from the list of the people that whom you want to send the message to. But if you wanted to send to the executive board, you can either direct it to me or to Rapiter Urfer, who's not there with us. We'll get your chit and we'll mark upon it. That is a chit to EB. That is your question chit. Now, if it is any personal chit, that will be intercommunicated between you like a direct messaging. Now, if it's a wire chit, the most problem is going to come in wire chit system because we don't have any formal triangle system. So what you can do, you have to write the same chit first to the executive board and then to that delegate and hope for your answer. Okay, as soon as you come to the executive board, it will come to a notice and we'll mark you. But if you truly want your answer, then you have to send it to the delegate too. For your marks, you have to just send to us, that is the executive board. So on the list of people, you have to just select either me or Arfa get the chit and we'll mark upon it. Now, one very thing clear that I want to make very clear, delegates, that is chits hold marks, but a greater proportion of marks are held by what you speak in the committee. It depends upon the executive board. Many people keep it a 60-40 ratio, some keep it a 80-20 ratio. But again, 40 in front of 60 and 20 in front of 80. Obviously, you'll get more marks from what you speak. So try to minimize your points and speak more and give less in writing. So am I clear on the chit basis how chits work in an offline EMU and how they're going to
Guys, am
function
I
even in
clear?
an EMU?
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah,
Oh,
ma'am, we can
great.
hear
I'm
you.
so sorry. I don't know how it got turned off. Lakshya, are you in the middle of explaining something?
No, ma'am, the chits were done. I was just asking, do they want any repetition or any, or is there any confusion?
Great, great. You can go ahead. You can go ahead.
For delegates, any sort of repetition or any confusion you have on chits? Both, you can ask in both contexts, the offline one and the EMU. Is it clear? So again, I'll repeat my last note, delegates, try to speak more because chits hold lesser marks in comparison to what you speak. Minimize your points when you speak, that you could speak more when you could speak more and give less in writing. Hand it over to Diksha, ma'am, now.
Great. I am sure the way Lakshya explained chits, it's pretty clear. Now, the value of chits sort of becomes important when it's a very large committee. Now, take for example, if it's a UNGA and there are, say, 100 delegates. So, of course, over a period of 2 days, it's not possible for everyone to be speaking multiple times. Now, what happens when that occurs is that importance of chits increases. The ratio in a large committee depends on the executive board discretion, but mostly somewhere is around 60-40 in a large committee. However, when the committee is small, the ratio of chits become less important because speaking more is possible. Now, take for example, if it's a smaller committee, a very small committee, say if it's a UNSC, chits are hardly even important. They're only for very important like purposes of names being added to GSL and all of that. Otherwise, chits usually hold relevance only when it's a large committee. So I would also sort of suggest the delegates try to speak more and less and focus less on chits. Aditya, can you take over for a moment in terms of how chits are going to work in an online manner? Can you just tell them the technical part?
Yes, ma'am. So, like, ma'am, there's no sense of taking chits on Zoom itself because Zoom, like, ma'am, your Zoom got crashed because of a technical issue. So
Yeah,
basically,
right, right.
what I do as a Aperture, I have an app known as Slack on which we can have a limit of around 10,000 messages, in which the delegates can name themselves as their country names and then send chits via the Slack app so that Lakshya sir can receive it and tag Lakshya sir as well as the delegate whom they want to ask a question, or maybe the WhatsApp group itself. I'll open it for lobbying, but on the day, like, Diksha ma'am, as it as it ma'am, it has to be decided by you. Like, do you want it to be held over Slack app or the WhatsApp group itself?
I think WhatsApp, again, what would the delegates, I think let's take a vote on this. So, delegates who want it to be on WhatsApp and not the Slack app, please raise your hands right now.
Uh, like, ma'am, basically, I prefer Slack because like you have a
Mhm.
database after the conference, ends, so that you can take out the average and all of those things. Like, if it's on WhatsApp, like it would be very difficult to sort it out, like which delegate has sent how many checks.
I couldn't get you. Could you repeat yourself?
Yeah. So basically, you'll have a database when you use Slack on the number of
Mhm.
how many chats a delegate has sent.
Okay, yeah, WhatsApp,
Yeah,
it'll
and
be difficult to keep it.
yeah.
I
Like
think
Lakshya
Aditya,
sir.
let's decide that amongst us. I think we let the delegates know by evening then.
Yeah. And ma'am, I'll open the group for official lobbying, like so that they can discuss the moderated caucus topics after
Hmm.
this training session ends.
Okay, that works. Lakshya, can you just take over in terms of what they need to know about
Oh, ma'am, your voice is not audible. Lakshya, you can take over. I guess ma'am is facing some technical issues right now. Netherlands, Ukraine, am I audible? Uh, Isaac, am I audible?
Yeah,
Okay, so
you're
I
audible to me.
okay, so like ma'am is facing some issues. So delegates, like at this point of time, any questions? Denmark, followed by Netherlands. Yes, Netherlands, your question, please. I can entertain it. Ma'am is not here as of now. Netherlands, you're not audible.
Okay, am I audible now?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I was about the chits thing that you were discussing about the applications.
Mhm.
Aditya, see, like I've learned something that an application has a limit that a device has a limit that about only lasts about 25 switches that you can switch one application to another application. If you do something more than that, then either of the application might stop. So I don't think that using another application rather than Zoom would be okay.
No, sir. The thing is, like, we'll have the meeting on Zoom itself, but as you can see, like, our vice chairperson and our chairperson got disconnected due to technical issues. Like, when you get disconnected, what happens is, like, I don't have any problem. You send, like, you if you send the chits via Zoom, but the thing is, when you get disconnected, all the chits get deleted. So I prefer like
Okay.
do it on the WhatsApp group itself or make it. There's an app known as Slack. Like I'll make a room for you all. So like
Yeah.
you all can try it. You all can join it till 13th or 14th. But the
No,
official lobby,
I
yeah.
was saying that like you're saying you're suggesting to use a different app, right?
No,
But
no,
a
not
device
not
is a limit.
not a different app. Sir, that's just for the chits, but the video conferencing will take place here.
Okay.
Yeah. So like you'll
Thank
have to do it. Like I have taken a pro subscription of Zoom, so like it may not be a problem.
Okay.
Yes, Ukraine. Have I answered you?
Uh, can you just put the spelling of that app in the
Sir, I'll give
chat?
you the link. Like, you don't need to make an account, but I'll send
Cool.
you the link. So then you need to go there and make an account from your country's name.
Okay.
Works for you?
Yes.
Okay. So Lakshay, you can take over if you are here, Lakshay. Diksha ma'am is also here. Diksha ma'am, are we audible?
Yeah, you guys are audible, but how is it getting disconnected every
That
15
may be a
minutes?
technical issue on your part. Like, it requires a good network.
Oh, that must be a problem. Great, whoever you guys.
Ma'am, like, I was entertaining. Lakshay also got disconnected. So, like,
Hi Aditya, I'm back.
yeah. So,
Great,
like,
Lakshya. Can you take it ahead from here? Tell them a bit about documentation, and then I think we're
yes,
good to go.
Netherlands, you were saying something.
No, I wasn't. Sorry.
Okay, sir.
Okay, so guys, coming to the documentation part. So I'll explain it in a very different context so it is clear to understand. You want to give me a second? I'm extremely sorry. I'm sorry, there are a bit connectivity issues on my end. So delegate, when it comes to your documentation part, whatever you discuss in these 2 days of the conference needs to be summarized and needs to be presented to the executive board for further submission to the secretariat. That is what a documentation does. That is your end documentation of the committee is just a summarization of whatever happened in these 2 days, or whatever will happen in the 2 days of the conference, and it basically includes your solutions. Whatever solution you all, as diplomats, as delegates of different countries, propose to the world, and how can world adapt to them. So as you know, the agenda is related to human rights and COVID-19, which is a very sensitive issue. So delegates, please, it's a request to please come up with solutions which are practical enough to be implemented. Like, just imagine you are the real delegates, you're the official delegates sitting in the official United Nations. So an end document is one of the most formal thing of a conference. Even a slight mistake in that documentation might lead to its scrapping, if you understand the quantum of the thing we are discussing. Am I clear till here? If you have any doubts, delegates, please raise your hand or put in the chat box. If not, so we continue. So delegates, there are a lot of forms of end documentation which are given up by different committees. But the most basic one, which is the draft resolution. Diksha ma'am, are you here?
Yes, I am.
So ma'am, we'll be working with a draft resolution only or a press
I
release?
think that we should leave to the delegates to decide.
Okay, so I'll explain both of them then, in that
Yeah,
case.
great. Delegates in terms of documentations, I personally think the executive board, it should be at the discretion of the delegates in terms of, what they want to decide to go ahead with. The executive board will be supportive of the decision the delegates make in terms of if it has majority. So basically, if most delegates want a press release, then we'll go ahead with the press release. If delegates want a proper draft resolution, it's on to them. So once Lakshya is done explaining what and how the documentation works, you guys can decide in terms of what you want from the conference. But I would suggest not to make a decision right now, because once the conference takes place, once you know the proceedings and how the debate structure is going, then you can decide if it's better to have a press release or if it's better to, have a proper draft resolution of sorts. That would depend on how the proceedings of the committee are. Great, Lakshya, you can go ahead.
Okay, so as ma'am said, it's up to you. So I'll be explaining you both the draft resolution. I'll be even explaining you the working paper, the draft resolution, and the press release. So delegates, as I told you, when it comes to end documentation, it is a very formal document. So it's just that we'll be submitting it to the secretariat. That would be the summary of what we did in these 2 days of the conference. So coming to your first end document, that is your working paper. Now, delegates, a working paper is not that formal when we compare it to a draft resolution, but again, it is one of the document of the committee. So in a working paper, what happens is delegates, either you form a block or you individually propose some solutions and you give it in writing to the executive board. That is a working paper. A working paper, if the delegates want, after some addition, subtraction, and editing, is converted into a draft resolution. So working paper could be of stage 1 and a draft resolution could be of stage 2. Am I clear till here? Now delegates, a few flaws, like I should say very minimal flaws in a working paper is acceptable, but in draft resolution it should be completely flawless. And there are certain rules that we need to keep in mind when we are preparing a draft resolution, which we'll be just discussing. So delegates, if you're clear with working paper, just imagine it as a piece of paper where you're writing solutions, and it's the head, it's your name. It's like a lot of people coming together, that is either a block or individual. The name is there and you're writing the solution. That is a working paper.
Yeah, delegates, well, there's one more document called a position paper. Not that it's required right now, but just to get you to know that a position paper is basically a document which is submitted before the conference. Now it depends. A lot of conferences ask you for a position paper. A lot of them do not ask. Again, it's at the discretion of the executive board. But if you're asked for a position paper, I'll just let you know what it is. A position paper is basically a piece of document which gives a preview of where your country stands in terms of a crisis. Again, just like the name suggests, a position paper, it sort of declares the position of a country when it comes to, how when it comes to a certain agenda. Take for example the pandemic, for that matter, the pandemic which is going on. In this case, a position paper can be a document of sort which sort of clarifies to the for the betterment of the committee, for the knowledge of the committee, that a certain country stands at this certain position all throughout the agenda. So that is basically a position paper. As far as this conference is concerned, whether we want a position paper from you or not, we'll let you know by tonight. If we do, so we'll ask you to email it to us. A position paper is usually somewhere, can be anywhere around, I don't know, like 200 to 400 words. Again, it depends. But we don't expect it to be really long in an essay format, and neither do we expect it to be just 2 lines. So just keep that in moderation. Rest we'll let you know by tonight if you're expecting a position paper or not. So that is one of the pre-conference documents. In a lot of conferences, there are awards for position papers, like the best position paper awards. I'm just letting you know, like that's one of the documents which is also prevalent in the MUN circuit. The rest, Lakshay, I give it to you.
Delegates, are you clear with the position paper and the working paper? Okay, for delegates, now we move towards the draft resolution. This document you'll be seeing this as your most frequently occurring ending document of most of the committees in the MUN circuit. So it is of very great importance to understand how a draft resolution is framed, how draft resolution is framed out, and what are the special rules regarding to your draft resolution. For delegates, coming to the first thing of a draft resolution is it has two major aspects when it comes to writing. A draft resolution has something called sponsors and has something called signatories. The sponsors are the people who actually write that draft resolution. Okay, say for a draft resolution is being written by the delegate of the United States of America along with one or two of his allies. So then they are going to be the sponsors. And then we have something called signatories. Signatories are those people who want their draft resolution to be discussed in the committee. They are not writing the draft resolution. They are merely giving their yes, it could be discussed in the committee. So that is what a sponsor and signatory, that is the importance of a sponsor and a signatory. Are you clear with sponsor and signatories? Some people also refer sponsors as authors. So it's a synonymous term. We could use either sponsors or authors, and the second term is signatories. So delegates, are you clear with the sponsors and signatories? Okay. So as I've seen no raise of hands, so I continue. After this, we have something called preambulatory clauses, and then we have something called operative clauses. Now, delegates, preambulatory clauses are, you just pick up them from past resolutions. These are just a copy paste of past solutions. What your main idea is, what your main solutions are, lie in the operative clauses. So we'll first discuss operative clauses. Now they are of more importance, and they are the thing that is discussed in the committee thoroughly. So your operative clauses are basically solutions that you propose to the world. They start with something called an operative clause. So like I gave example of your operative clause, it could be urges, affirms, reaffirms, requests. So these are some operative clauses which are used for the starting of an operative clause. It is very necessary to start an operative clause with these words itself. If it is starting with some other word, then delegates the draft resolution. It depends again on the discretion of the executive board if they consider it that big flaw. But delegate, this might be one of the reasons for the scrapping of the draft resolution. Okay. So an operative clause must start with an operative, like all your operative clauses should start with the word that refers to an operative clause. Now your operative clause must end with a comma. There shouldn't be any full stop in your draft resolution. Wherever a full stop comes, the draft resolution ends there. It is not read after that full stop. Okay? So it should be only one full stop, and that would be at the last, after the last word of the draft resolution. So as it is a very important document, so I am going slowly with its sponsors
Sir,
or
I guess
authors.
Netherlands had a doubt. Netherlands raised the hand.
Yeah, I had a doubt. Am I
Yeah,
audible?
yeah. So you may go ahead.
So I actually wanted to say that there is, I guess, a photo on Google that tells every word that is used in preambulatory and the operative clause. So if you guys could put a screenshot on the WhatsApp group so that everyone could see it.
Delegates will surely put if it is in accord with the UNA USA.
Okay.
Okay, delegates, it can't be simply trusted. We need to first cross-check it with the UNA USA.
Okay.
Okay. So delegates, we did sponsors or authors, we did signatories, Then we understood that an operative clause are just your solutions. And then you understood that an operative clause must start with a word that belongs to the operative clause group, like urges, affirms, reaffirms. So delegate, is everything clear till here? So we'll continue. If you have any doubt, please raise your hand. Don't hesitate. It is a very technical thing, your draft resolution. Seeing none, we proceed. So now an operative clause, as a delegate, my first end with a comma. That is a structure of an operative clause. It starts with an operative word, it ends with a comma. It is your own solution. It shouldn't be plagiarized. Now, if a point or a solution is very big, okay, it's quite large to accommodate into a one point. If you accommodate it, it would look like a paragraph. What you do, you split it into a main point and subpoints. Okay, for delegates, your main point could be 1 and your subpoints could be A, B, C, like that. A subpoint should always end with a semicolon. It couldn't again end with a full stop, otherwise your draft resolution will stop there. It won't be read after that. Sorry, it would end there. It won't be read after that. Am I clear till there, here, delegates? Like an operative clause starts with an operative word. Yeah, anyone? Okay, yeah,
Hello.
sorry. Ukraine, United Kingdom.
So where does so just to clarify this, a comma is between the points you are discussing. That's where you put a comma.
Yes, sure. So it's basically whenever, it's like you have written it in points. Whenever your first point ends, you need to put a comma over there. Then you have to start with the next point.
Okay.
Like, okay, Delegates to United
Yes.
Kingdom.
So from my previous MUN, I had a format of a draft resolution. Can I repeat it to you? So if you could approve of that.
Okay.
Yeah. So it says draft resolution 2.0, then sponsors, then signatories, then the agenda, and then the I was attending United Nations Environment Program, so then it could come as United Nations Human Rights Council, and then the solutions. Is it okay?
Ma'am, the main thing that we all focus right now is on the operative clause and preamble clause. Once it's done, then we will approve it with Diksha, ma'am. And it again depends,
Okay.
delegate, which end document we are going further with. Delegate of Netherlands. Otherwise, ma'am, the format was okay. There was no flaw in that format.
Thank you.
Delegate of Netherlands.
So can you repeat the semicolon part? I couldn't hear it.
Yeah, delegate. I was. So it's just that we have. Okay. So as I said, operative clause ends in a comma, and if you have a sub point to operative clause.
Sir, just to improve you, sir, operative clauses end with a semicolon, and preambulatory clauses end with a comma.
Okay.
Lakshya, sir, please note this.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm sorry for that. It was a bit confusion, so I've clarified it. Preambulatory clause ends with a comma, and operative clause ends with a semicolon.
I
Okay.
mentioned this in the chat, sir. Yeah.
Okay, I just saw it.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, delegates. So I repeat, your big clause should end with a semicolon. It should start with an operative word, such as urges, affirms, reaffirms, and should end with a semicolon. And then you can even have subpoints to your main clause. Like if you have a very big point, and if you put it in one point, it looks like it's a paragraph between your points. You can split it up between a main point and the subpoints to that main point. Am I clear? Till here, delegates? If you have any confusion, I'm here on the participants list. If you are raising your hands. Seeing none, we proceed. So now, delegates, you are clear in the picture that draft resolution is a formal paper with the word written draft resolution on the head, and there's something called preambulatory clauses on the top, which we haven't discussed. Then followed by this preambulatory clauses, we have something called operative clauses, which we have discussed. These are the solutions that you present to the committee. These are your own solutions. These are not plagiarized. And it should end with a semicolon and should always start with an operative word. That is urges, affirms, reaffirms, etc. So delegates, are we very clear with operative clauses? And again, the one point that is very important, a full stop can't come in a draft resolution, otherwise we won't read it further. Okay. Now, preambulatory clauses, as the word suggests, it's like taken from previous past year resolutions. Okay, delegates, you copy it from a past year resolution and it starts with ing words basically. I should say generally start with ing verbs, affirming, reaffirming, urging, asking, etc. And it should end in a comma. Now, delegates, your preambulatory clauses are not read in a committee. Generally, your operative clauses are read because they are your own, and that is where most of your tricky part lies. That is amendment, which we'll do after once we have done with the discussion. So your preambulatory clauses are nothing but past year resolutions, starting with an ing verb, ending with a comma, and they should come above your operative clauses. They should be there because it is the part of the format, and you can't violate the format of the draft resolution because the draft resolution will be scrapped in that case. So delegates, we did sponsors or authors, then we did signatories, then we did preambulatory, operative, preambulatory word, operative words, then we did something called subclause to an operative clause, and that's all we have discussed about the draft resolution. Sorry. You have any confusion over here? Yes, Netherlands?
Sir, I wanted to ask if stating can be used as a preambulatory word, because in one of the previous MUNs that I have attended, a ruckus, occurred just because a delegate wrote stating in his preambulatory clause, but no solution came out. So I just had this confusion. If you could, if a delegate could use stating as a preambulatory word.
Delegates, I have a document which has a list of preambulated clauses which you can use in what situations. So if you all would like, for the benefit of the committee, I would share that in the group, so you can just like go through that, and like that those are basically appropriate words which can be used in the entire draft resolution for different situations which might arise. So if you would like that, I would share that on the WhatsApp group. It has been
Yeah,
made.
sure, ma'am. Please, if you could put it on the group.
Yeah, great. Give me time by tonight. I'll just find that document and I'll just put it out there. So it's better for you guys to use it. Also, when it comes to the draft resolution, a lot of executive board members are very, very strict in terms of how you go about your words and how the words, punctuations, all of that. Again, I am strict with it to a certain extent, but more than that, I would value the gist of the draft resolution in terms of what it's trying to say and what the sort of materials you guys are bringing out in the committee. That would be more important. However, just pay attention. Don't get very stuck on the draft resolution, because again, your contribution in terms of the debate to the committee is extremely important. So for that point, keep the draft resolution as an important part, but don't just like get very confused and stuck up in it, so that you like, even compromise on your research. So any day, the first priority would be your research. Research well, engage in debate, add to the debate in terms of the creativity which you can provide, because UNHRC, again, I'm repeating myself, UNHRC does leave a lot of space for originality of content, which a lot of other committees do not. Right? So UNHRC has a lot of room to provide novelty, where you can give your own solutions, come up with creative solutions rather. That would be very beneficial to the committee. So when it comes to documentation, have an eye on it, take care of it, but don't get very stuck up on the documentation part as well. Are there any questions, delegates? Seeing none, Lakshay, you can take it over.
The delegates, now we have something called as a press release. Now, delegates, this is another form of documentation which committees propose. It is again, okay, one thing that is common to all these end documents is that you give a gist of the session and your solutions. Just the way of presenting differs from one to another. A working paper is a bit informal, a draft resolution is a very formal document. Now, when we come to a press release, it could be written either in blocks. Okay, delegates, like it's a block of 5 countries writing a press release. It is a unanimous press release. If you want to write, delegates, it's simply a piece of paper with all your solutions. That's the press release.
To add to what Lakshay mentioned about the press release, delegates understand that sometimes whenever delegates feel that there is no proper solution which you guys could come up to, or there is a problem which requires say more deliberation, or it's not possible to come up to a solution at this given point of time, that is when you can utilize a press release. A press release will basically be a sort of a statement which is formally put out there from everyone present in the conference. It's basically a formal document which is sort of put out there for the world to know that yes, in the UNHRC, in this session, this all was discussed, and that is what came out as a fruitful, fruitful result from all of that deliberation. That is what a press release will look like. It's not obligatory in nature in terms of it doesn't implement anything as such. It's just like a statement of sorts where the delegates put forth their stance and what they discuss in the committee for the world out there. That is basically a press release. You're going to the press and releasing a statement. That is what a press release looks like. So if you want the committee to not sort of have rules in place, you can go ahead with the press release. Again, as an executive board member, I would like the committee to decide and the delegates to decide whatever they want for the committee. I don't think the discretion of the executive board should work. Whatever you guys pass as a motion as a unanimous committee, if you pass a press release, it's a press release. If you want a draft resolution, again, it's up to you as a committee. So I think that is left to the committee for a decision to be made on this. Lakshay, you can take forward.
Okay, so as ma'am said, the press release is it's not obligatory, that it doesn't bind anyone. It's just whatever was discussed in the committee, it is a gist and prospective solutions. And in a single statement, that is, it is a piece of paper with the word press release written on it. Then whoever the people write that press release and then the solutions or the gist. Okay, delegates, it might be like the delegate of, it's in pointer form again. This point 1, point 2, point 3, then sub points and like that. So that is what a press release is. A press release, why people prefer a press release over a draft resolution, if ma'am said you have some confusion, and then it is not a non-obligatory document, it doesn't bind anyone. It is a clear statement, what you are presenting to the world. It is just what happened in the committee and you're showing to the world. Are we clear with the press release? It's again a piece of paper with all your solutions. That's what was working paper, that's what was the DIA, and that's what a press release. Only the format differs. Ma'am, are you going ahead with amendments today?
Delegates, honestly, do you all think it's a little too much to take in for now? Because if you want to discuss amendments, I think that we can either do right before starting the second day conference, because again, all this documentation information will come handy on the second day of the conference, not on the first day at all. So do you guys think it's a little too much for now? Do you want to take it up that very day? How do you want to go about it? Tell me that. Let's put it to vote. Is there anyone who wants to say something about this session, how they want it to go about, or anything, any feedback, anything of any sort? Please raise your hands now. Yes, Netherlands, go ahead.
I just first want to talk about the amendments. Maybe you should do it afterwards because there are many delegates who left the conference.
Okay.
And about the session right now, it was quite informative, I guess, for the first timers. And I have quite an experience in MUN, so yeah, I think it's quite informative.
Great. So I take into consideration, is everyone else okay with having the amendments part and the documentation in detail to be discussed before the second day of the conference? Is everybody, if this is unanimous opinion, I think we would like to go ahead with it, if it's too much for you guys to sort of take in at the moment. Delegates, those who want the amendments and the rest of the details about the documentation to be discussed on the second day of the conference, please raise your hands now. Looks like, yeah, looks like almost all of you. Yeah, great. So all of you wanted to be discussed on that very day. So I think we'll leave it right now. We'll discuss the amendments, friendly, unfriendly, all the details about amendments and documentation, I think, on the morning of the second day of the conference. Now let's address a few questions. I had one question noted down, which was, I think that I don't remember who asked it, but someone asked, I think the delegate of UK asked about research sources. Am I right? Delegate of UK?
Yes.
Yeah, great. So what did you want to know?
What are the viable sources? I know Wikipedia is not allowed, like it's not viable.
Yeah. So again, you can use trusted agencies, like you can say use Al Jazeera, Al Jazeera, Reuters, UN, any information outright released by the UN can be used, Reuters, Al Jazeera, and then also the background guide mentions a lot of sources which you can rely upon. So I would
Any
suggest you,
news websites can be used,
yeah, international news
like
websites
BBC.
can be, yeah, great, that can be used. It's a credible source. And also in terms of sources and references, you'll also find the towards the end of the background guide there's a list of sources, so I think that would sort of kickstart your research.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Are there any other questions, delegates? You may ask now. Delegates, can all of you lower your hands first? Great. Now if there are any questions, delegate, please raise your hands. Are there any questions, delegates? Anything. Don't hesitate. It can be literally anything. Yes, delegate of Ukraine. Go ahead.
Do you know what times
Mhm.
roughly the actual debate is going to be on the day?
So you're in the UK, right?
Yeah.
So the difference is 5.5 hours. So for you, I think the earliest that's gonna be should be somewhere around 6:30, 6:45 in the morning. Does that work for you?
Yeah.
Or we can make it 7 in the morning if you're
Well,
comfortable.
I'll check, but I think it might only be 4.5. I'll check on my phone now.
I think it's 5.5, but the DST is making it 4.5, isn't it?
I don't know. It says 4:30 on my phone.
Great. So if
It's
we
4
start the
hours.
conference at 12 here, yeah. So if we
Yeah,
start the
4
conference
and a half.
at, yeah. So if we start the conference at 12 here, that would be 7:30 a.m. for you. Does that work for you?
Yes.
Are you sure about that?
Yeah, I can be up by 7:30.
Yeah, great. So I think the final confirmation of the timing of the conference, we'll give it to you in a day, maximum by tomorrow evening. But preferably it's gonna be ranging sometime around 7:30 to 8 in the morning for you, and for the Indian Standard Time, it's gonna be somewhere around 12 to 12:30 p.m.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. Are there any other doubts, delegates? You may raise your hands now.
And Aditya, when will you open the group for the lobbying?
Right after this session ends.
Okay.
The lobbying group will not have the executive board members, right?
No, ma'am, we've added you, and you have to mark upon it. Like I'll let you know about that after like the delegates leave this meeting.
Okay, delegates, also, are there any questions about lobbying? Are you sure what lobbying looks like? How it, like, are you basic? Do you know what lobbying is? Is there
Nope,
any
no
questions?
idea.
Okay, great. So basically, lobbying would, like, in a place where like a lot of delegates come. Again, you have to ultimately come up with solutions which are multilateral in nature, not just like unilaterally decided or bilaterally decided, right? So now, when you have to come up with solutions which involve multiple countries, you of course need to sort of forge alliances and, like, form alliances or sort of form blocks of sorts, have people on your side. All of that is lobbying, like having people on your side so that your draft resolution are passed, so that what you want in the committee sort of gets passed, right? So you need to have diplomatic relations that way. So building all those diplomatic relations in an MUN is called lobbying. So in an
Okay.
offline conference, it usually happens, again, the delegates might know each other, or, like, before the conference formally starts in the morning of the conference, delegates sort of get to talk to each other and, like, discuss what they want, what are better solutions and all of that. But since it's an e-conference, this is all going to happen on a WhatsApp group. Delegate of Ukraine, are you added on that group?
I am, yes.
Yeah, great. So I think all the lobbying is going to happen on the WhatsApp group. And one point being that the lobbying in this e-conference might be a little more formal than it is in otherwise offline conferences. Because in offline conferences, when the lobbying happens, is mostly when the executive board is not present. Like maybe say during lunches or before the executive board is there in the conference room itself. So that lobbying is more like informal. But considering it's a virtual conference, this lobbying is going to be more formal in nature because we're going to mark you on that. Lobbying has a certain amount of marks. If you guys want to know exactly what you're being marked upon, I'll just give you a rough idea. It's going to be research, mainly research, foreign policy, adherence to foreign policy, diplomatic courtesy to a certain extent, again lobbying, and contribution and direction to debate. Those are the points you're going to be marked at, out of which research is really important. So I would suggest for now, really focus on research, try to look for solutions, come up with newer ideas on how things can be sorted out, come up with creative solutions, because creativity is possible in this committee. Number one, because it's UNHRC, and number two, because the agenda is of the nature which is unforeseen. Like pandemics like this do not happen, right? It's probably the first time in our and even our parents lives in lives that this is happening for the first time. So novelty is possible. So I would suggest coming up with creative solutions. That being my suggestion for all of you. So research well, delegates. If there are any other questions, you may raise your hands now.
Can I put an opinion on lobbying on this particular agenda, ma'am?
Yes, go ahead.
Ma'am, because this is a kind of agenda that requires solutions of each and every country that that will lead to a single direction. So I don't think that lobbying would be a proper, it would be a huge problem in this, because most of the countries, first of all, more than half of the delegates are new here. So they might, just need for other delegates to speak up and they could listen to them. So rather than lobbying and creating different blocks of different countries, it would be better if each and every country just tries and make the solutions in just one block, or you know
Again,
avoid.
if that's what you all want as a committee, I think you shouldn't be unilaterally deciding that. Again, talk about it on the group, come with a solution if that's what everyone wants. So you sort of to not have a block or to not have differing opinions. Again, it's your choice as a committee. But coming to your point about how differing solutions are not possible, I don't agree, because again, the pandemic is the same for everyone, but solutions to the pandemic are not. Like look at New Zealand, how they've handled the pandemic. They aren't a coronavirus affected country anymore, right? So their stance on a lot of issues might differ from, say, India, which is now one of the most like one of the adversely affected countries. And then again, India's stance might differ from, say, Italy and Spain, which is sort of now getting out of the pandemic, right? So it's we can't say that if the pandemic is the same, situations are going to be the same everywhere. Like you look at USA, it's very different from how situations are in, say, South America in terms of the pandemic situation, or say in Africa, right? So I think if the pandemic is the same, but the solutions to it are not, and neither are the ways governments are tackling it. So let's not assume that everyone is going to have a similar point of view just because we're going through a same pandemic. So I think that being that, rest of it you guys can decide in the group. Just feel free to lobby, feel free to put your points across, get people to agree on your points, because again, that's what being a diplomat is about. So that's that. Are there any other questions, delegates? You may raise your hands if you have any questions. I don't see questions, so I think that's that, delegates. If there are any doubts for that matter, I think you guys can reach out to me on WhatsApp. Leave me a text. My number is of course there on the group, so you guys can reach out to me or Lakshay or to Arav or to anyone in the executive board you want to. So we're free to help. We're free to help and happy to help, rather. Besides that, anything you reach out to us, research well, delegates. That's what I would say. Just research well and please focus on your foreign policy, because that would count up to a lot of marks. Don't defy your foreign policy, because again, consider you're the real delegates of the nations you are actually representing here. So I think that's that. We can be done with the meeting. If there are anything else, I'm asking for the last time, any questions of sorts.
Thank you, ma'am, for the session. It was really helpful.
You're welcome, delegate. So I'm seeing there are no questions. So I think you all are free to leave the conference now. Aditya, do you want me to stay?
Did you say something?
No, I
The training session is almost, yeah, it's over. So you guys can leave the conference. Aditya, do you want me to stay on the meeting?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, great. Go ahead.
Nora, you're from both the IDs.
What are there?
There are two IDs from which you are connected.
Yeah, you can remove the Director General one. It's in my laptop actually. The laptop got hang and I'm not able to log out.
Yeah, okay. Like Nora, you can also leave. I wanted to talk about the marking part, so you can
Okay.
also leave regarding.
Yeah, sure.
Aditya, why don't I call you up instead of the Zoom meeting?